It is time for our final serving of beef with Ed, at least for this trilogy. When we left off, Ed was complaining that people accept other explanations for religious experience other than that people are literally experiencing God, and I talked about the reasonableness of at least accepting the possibility of alternative explanations, which is something that he himself had expressed earlier in the video, remaining open to the possibility of things that you personally don't accept. Anyway, then he said the following, in reference to his perception that people are too quick to accept alternative explanations on the say-so of people like Richard Dawkins or myself. And that's where we're starting, so begin beef.
You guys listen to all the new atheists, you listen to Dawkins, you listen to Logicked and that, and they just come up with some theory, and then you're like, yeah, that's it. And it's because you have confirmation bias. You're looking for a reason not to believe in God.
Well, being too quick to accept some explanation for a phenomenon wouldn't really help with that. Think about the context of what we're talking about. We're talking about your argument that people have religious experiences, and therefore it's reasonable to accept the possibility that a theistic explanation for those experiences is correct. Well, sure, but it's also reasonable to accept the possibility of other kinds of explanations, and therefore to recognize that we haven't reached an answer on the cause of a phenomenon simply by acknowledgement of the existence of the phenomenon. If there are two or more possible answers, then the field is not only one answer wide. There's a broader range of possibilities, which we're going to have to use some sort of reasoning to narrow, or at least to rank by probability. And this alone, absent any further information, is already a reason not to treat this phenomenon as a reason to believe in God in and of itself. There's no need to accept any other possibility as likely true, to not accept your proposed possibility as likely true. We're already there. We don't need to go any further. And in fact, let's say that we don't have any further information. Okay, in that case, going further would be actually unjustified. Now, I'm not saying we don't have any further information. I'm just saying right from the start, we're already at the point where not believing in God just on this basis is already reasonable. We don't need to look for other reasons. Now, excluding other possibilities beyond the theistic one perhaps could be done, but that would require some sort of effort to be reasonable in doing that. There would need to be some kind of a reasoning process there by which you're eliminating alternatives. But if the other alternatives are just discounted out of hand, that would reflect a bias. I don't know if that's a thing you do, Ed, I'm just pointing it out. Because it's a thing that happens all too often. Over and over again, God is presented as the only possible option, despite that being clearly false. Theists will falsely put forward some limitation that isn't actually real, and we'll say, that's not real, that's a fake limitation, you just made that up. But all too often, that seems not to be understood. But I guess to wrap it up, yes, of course there are atheists with a confirmation bias, and there are atheists who are too quick to jump to conclusions, but I don't think the latter necessarily implies the former, and I don't think the former necessarily leads to the latter, but you seem to be pretty definitively stating that these are connected, in general, with, as you put it, you guys.
And that's why I believe that a lot of you, not you, so please don't get angry, but a lot of you reject God not because of logic, not because of reason, but because of emotional reasons, because of pride, because you've met Christians who are annoying, you've met Christians who are pretty thick. You're not willing to even consider that there's a God because you like your lifestyle at the moment.
Is this your core argument for why atheism is apparently so often rooted in emotion? Atheists are too quick to accept non-theistic explanations for phenomena, and you think that reflects a confirmation bias. And therefore, you're just sort of coming up with all these reasons why this confirmation bias exists. It seems like there are a lot of pretty tenuous connections there. It seems like you're kind of following a path that makes sense in your head without giving too much consideration to alternative possibilities. I gotta be honest, Ed, you seem kinda like you're looking for a reason to get to the conclusion that people are atheists for emotional and lifestyle reasons rather than rational ones.
I go down Speaker's Corner here in Sydney and I speak to atheists. And there's one guy down there, he's sort of like a Buddhist. And he said to me last weekend, he said, I don't believe in Jesus because I'm not willing to.
A Buddhist told you that. In other words, he's not willing to convert from his religion to your religion. Okay, what does that have to do with me?
And I really respected that. I was like, finally, someone who's actually honest.
But that's not confirmation bias. People can only be actually honest if they say the thing that you want them to say. If they express something about themselves that you already think about them. That's not confirmation bias, definitely not. That's something those atheists do.
And then I speak to a load of the other atheists down there who are very nice people, they're very intelligent. But they'll come up with all these reasons like you come up with. And then I dig deep a bit. And then they're like, I went to a Catholic school as a kid, and XYZ. And I'm like, oh, there we go. There it is.
There it is. There's the one little thing I can take as confirming my bias. Guess I'll toss away all the rest of that garbage I heard before. You know, Ed, someone can have gone to a Catholic school and also think your reasoning sucks. I don't know why you think the one overrides the other.
It's emotional reasons.
Is it? I went to Catholic school and XYZ. What a tragic tale. Clearly this is this person's main reason for not believing you. Dude, it's absolutely unbelievable that you just brought up the term confirmation bias and now you're doing this. It's so absurd I would almost think it was a bit if I didn't know better.
And then, which is very valid. Like, it matters. Like, those emotional reasons matter.
You didn't even present any. You made up the example and it still doesn't contain any emotional reasons. You didn't say anything about them. You said the person went to Catholic school. That doesn't tell me anything about their emotions. Like, what is the assertion here? That Catholic school is so inherently traumatizing for literally everyone that it becomes their number one reason for everything they do and think in the future? That's the only way this could make any sense at all as a line of reasoning. But you didn't even say that. I would appreciate literally any effort.
And like I said, I'm not saying that's you. You know, you might genuinely not believe in God because of reason. But when you actually look at reasons for not believing in God, and I know you'll say like, oh, you know, we don't have to have reasons for not believing in God. It's your burden of proof. But they don't hold up. Anyway.
The reasons we don't need to have don't hold up. Doesn't seem to matter if we don't need to have them, but what reasons are you talking about? Which ones don't hold up and why? Because some people went to Catholic school and some Buddhist at the park told you he doesn't want to change religions. What in the hell are you on about? Man, I'm beefing today. Ed's not beefing, but I'm beefing. I'm feeling like a beefy boy.
His proposal seems to be intended to be universal, that everyone does come up with this answer, that everyone has awareness of its truth, which is false in my case.
Yeah, obviously. You know, it's just a generalization. You know, I'm just using hyperbole. I'm using strong statements to get your guys' attention, to irk something in you, so that you engage with me.
Yeah, and then you're complaining about it and backpedaling and the whole thing. It seems like a really silly choice. I guess maybe you know that now. It doesn't seem to have the effect you were going for.
But I think I've probably gone a bit too far with my language, because I think it's interesting, isn't it? And I'm sure you're aware of this. Like, if I was just to use very neutral language, like, I just get no one watching it. But so sometimes you use words or language that's a bit more antagonistic or slightly a bit more exaggerating to try and draw people in, so they engage with you. So they go away and think about it.
Well, sure, I might speak in a more aggressive way or a more heated way for effect, but that doesn't mean I'm just going to say a bunch of crap. I'm going to say what I actually think. And the weird thing is, in this video, you've kind of talked as if what you said before isn't what you actually think, but you've also talked in this video as if what you said before is what you actually think, and you've doubled down on it. So who knows at this point? You're an enigma, maybe even more so than me.
I think I probably underestimated you guys, or you know, I'm quite inexperienced in this. I've only done a few videos on atheism and whatnot. You know, I've been reading on it for a while trying to understand you guys.
Reading what? I gotta be honest, in terms of reading on this subject, I don't even know what I would recommend, if anything. I think you'd be much better talking to atheists. Like, in a real way, in a calm setting, not in the comments. Again, invitation's open.
But I probably use... So I don't think every one of you, you know what I mean? I take that back and I apologise anyway. So yeah, you've got an apology at me.
Okay, I don't need apologies, but sure, cool. I at least appreciate that you back down from the universal thing. That's another one of those things that can be a real problem. Just getting people to acknowledge that there might be someone who doesn't fit the mold the Christians created. So I appreciate that, really. A lot. I'm really happy about that, and good job, man.
But considering that he's proposed a way to test it, which should apply to everyone, and the test has failed, in my case, my entire life, and therefore that my personal experience falsifies his hypothesis, at least to my satisfaction. Of course, it's different for everyone else who would have to take me at my word. But nevertheless, all this being the case...
Fair enough. I'll give you that one.
Thank you again. I really appreciate it again. Now, this is impressive. You see what I mean? Ed's cool. Even though I got a bit frustrated with a couple of things in this video, I just can't help but like Ed. You know, Ed and I have huge disagreements, clearly, and major misunderstandings. But Ed has a streak of intellectual honesty that is hard to find, and for that I really like him. Ed's a good dude.
No, I appreciate that, you know, everyone's experience is different, your experience is different, so Yeah.
Okay, great, appreciated again. Let's move on to something else.
He appears to possess no special insight into the general human condition or the minds of others, but believes he has access to the deepest of truths about that. And so to me, he comes off as so deeply unserious that, again, it's like watching the opposing army piss themselves.
It's like that one friend who always knows the... Yeah, I've definitely annoyed you.
Yeah, I think that shows. I also think I was in a mood that day, though. I wasn't really in the mood to make a video. I was like, ugh, not my day, but I'll do it anyway. And that's how it sometimes turns out when I do that. Start in a bad mood, you end up making a video like you're in a bad mood. I don't know if my viewers consider that to be a good thing or a bad thing. I guess they can leave their opinions about that in the comments, but either way, it does seem to be a thing. I'm an emotional atheist when I'm in a bad mood.
Sorry, bro. I don't mean to annoy you. I'm just trying to get you to think outside of your box. You know what I mean?
Okay, that's fine. Come to my Discord, tell me the parameters of the box that you think I'm inside of, and then we'll discuss in what way exactly you want me to think outside of it. And then I'll do it live on the call. You can listen live as my mind tiptoes its way out of the box.
Because it's difficult me saying this. Being a Christian is a better life than what you guys have. I know that will annoy you, some of you. You'll be like, oh, how you don't even know my life. Rah, 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 rah.
No, you're welcome to think that. That's your personal preference. I mean, it's true. You don't know my life, or what I think about pretty much anything, or how I interpret pretty much anything about life. I think by this point in the video, that's kind of clear. But nevertheless, I get it. You like your Christian life. You think it's good stuff. And when you think about not living that way, you think it would be worse. That's what it's like in your imagination. I understand that that's the information that you're working with. All you can do is kind of try to make this comparison of what you would prefer and figure out what you find preferable based on your current understanding, however accurate or inaccurate that may be. So I have no problem with this. I don't believe you're correct, but oh well. What else is new?
But just from what I hear from you guys, I see in the comments, and it appears to me, and again, I'm not overgeneralization, I know you're all different, but you guys are searching for something. You know what I mean? You're on this world like I am, spinning around the sun, and you're watching all these videos on religion, and then you're like, oh, it's just so stupid. But I can see you guys are searching for something to understand the world. You're trying to understand it. And if I question you, you're like, no, I don't care.
No, you're definitely right. I mean, obviously, as you say, not universal. There are people who really don't care that much about understanding the world. But I think my big speech where I compared the lustful surface level understanding to the committed relationship of trying to understand reality more deeply probably makes it pretty clear that I, for one, do care about understanding things. Not to the exclusion of all else. I don't care about it enough to spend all day doing that. Every day, but I do spend time on this. There are many aspects of the universe that I'm interested in understanding. And of course, questions about origins are among them, and questions about concepts like meaning and purpose and morality and so on, and where these derive from, and topics about religion, theology, philosophical justifications for belief in God, the implications of a hypothetical universe with a God. Believe it or not, such topics can be very interesting even if you don't believe in a God, because the mind is a toy as much as a tool. It's a fun thing to play with. Rolling ideas around, even if you don't think they're about something strictly real, is entertaining.
And reading between the lines, I don't pick up a lot of joy, a lot of happiness, a lot of peace.
Well, I think the problem there, Ed, is that you're not really reading between the lines. At least not in the way that would give you accurate results. But it's okay. I can understand your confusion on this point. This is a very oddball niche, and we are quite an unusual group of people who enjoy a very odd and specific form of intellectual jousting, which to the uninitiated can seem really highly unpleasant. But I do have to say, I think you've been engaging in it in this video, granted with a lot of caveats about, with all due respect, I respect you guys, I'm totally not generalizing, all that kind of stuff. But still, you have been doing the thing. You've been playing the Christian role in this game quite well, and giving, I don't know about as good as you got, but certainly at least returning a few volleys. And you don't seem to not be enjoying it. Maybe you're still a little bit unsure, but I really don't think you have far to go to at least understanding the nature of the hobby and how it can be fun and lighthearted and chill, despite sometimes not seeming that way on the surface. And I want to say, by the way, you're quite welcome in my community. People will argue with you, no doubt, but nevertheless, we'd be glad to have you around. And no, not just as a punching bag. So consider showing up. Seriously.
What I'm saying is that, like, prior to me being a Christian, I was so, okay, I don't want to be like one of these, oh, I was so lost and now I'm saved, or oh, it's all great.
I watched your testimony video, and actually it literally says that in it. And also there's a lot of crying and emotion stuff.
Deep down, I felt empty, quite broken and lost. As a last resort, I prayed to God in tears, promising to change. Burst into tears, cried. I said, God, help me out this one time and I'll always believe in you. Cried, I prayed. I said, please forgive me, Father. Give me one more chance, but felt powerless. I then received salvation by proclaiming Jesus as my Lord and Saviour. The emptiness in my life disappeared, and I discovered that following Jesus through his Holy Spirit is better than I could have imagined. I feel much more at peace, joy and love than in my pre-Christian days. Following Jesus through his Holy Spirit is the best life ever, and it's for everyone. All you have to do is invite him into your heart and hold on, because it's the best ride you can ever imagine.
It does make me wonder if this whole ascribing of emotional motivations to other people might have a little hint, just the smallest drop of projection in it. Possibly. You've been dropping some food for thought, right? Quite a bit of it, in fact. I think it's fair that I toss this one little thing back at you as a possibility.
But Christianity is amazing. Like, what you've been taught about Christianity is not true. You've been propagandized by the new atheists.
Okay, I'm interested. I'm curious. What am I missing? Wait, am I the propagandist or the propagandized or both? I guess that'll affect how applicable this is to me. Well, I'm me. I'm watching it. I'll just assume it is applicable to me.
And a lot of them is from universities that are very influenced by Marxism, anti-Christian.
What are you trying to do by saying that? To imply that a lot of new atheists are Marxist university professors, whatever quantity a lot is supposed to refer to, and therefore create a mental connection between atheism and Marxism on the off chance that someone listening to you will think, Marxism bad though, and then in their emotional recoil suddenly start finding Christianity more believable. What a transparently silly tactic. But, you talk as though it'll be some really common thing among the atheists you're talking to, that their understanding of Christianity comes primarily from the new atheists. But you're speaking English, and in the Anglosphere, the main ways people learn about Christianity are being Christian, knowing and talking to Christians, hearing Christians speak.
And Christianity is so different to what I thought it was prior to being a Christian. I thought it was the Pope, moody, boring Christians, and a church building. But it's not like that at all.
And that's what those dastardly Marxist new atheists want us to believe Christianity's about, because it'll make us not like it as much. But that's all the stuff I actually do like. I've seen how people in churches here act. They're all upbeat. Oh, we're having fun. I'm hip with the kids. And then they got office carpets and plain white drywall. Catholicism at least has style. Well, in Europe anyway. I don't know how it is here. I have not been in a Catholic church here. All that stuff you're talking about, the Pope, him and the Vatican, that whole thing has immaculate aesthetics. 10 out of 10 for me. Moody, boring Christians, especially like boring old theologians in tweed jackets, perfect. And a church building, kind of vague, so it depends which church building you're talking about. But I have been in lots of churches in northern Italy. One of them was Protestant. Tiny little thing tucked away in the corner. Nobody wants to look at that there. But every single one of them, including the Protestant one, spectacular. I could live in any one of those. Just roll me out a mat on the floor, I'll be happy. The church buildings here in Canada, though, yeah, I'd rather sleep in my old cubicle.
There's so many things to it that are really exciting and fun, and you have community, and you love peace, joy.
Yes, we know community is a big aspect of the religion. And of course a big thing that draws people into the religion and keeps them there. As obviously a huge percentage of the atheists that you're interacting with will know, since they're ex-Christians. Again, I watched your testimony, and I was really not surprised that you were heavily swayed by the experience of being in a big room with a bunch of people who were all ecstatically praising Jesus.
She told me to pray and ask God which way was the truth. So I did. I prayed, and a week later I decided, after a few beers, to go to church and learn about this great spiritual leader called Jesus, who I'd read about in a book called The Power of Now. At the end of the service, the preacher said, I command healing, deliverance and freedom. Come, Holy Spirit, in the name of... And then there was a long pause. And then he said, Jesus. And when he said Jesus, all the people who had their hand up, many were manifesting, many, like unclean spirits or healings. the Holy Spirit basically fell, and it was incredible. And I knew straight away that it was God in action. I then received salvation by proclaiming Jesus as my Lord and Saviour.
That's a pretty typical feeling at that type of gathering, and it does a lot of heavy lifting for, again, pretty much every religion.
And you connect with God, and God is real. I know you think I'm crazy. I used to think people who spoke like me were crazy. But God is real.
Then convince us of it, Ed. I'm sorry, but church is really exciting, and it makes me feel all kinds of ways, isn't doing it. Every religion does this. It's used at political rallies and concerts and sports games, too. This is standard crowd psychology stuff. You're not saying anything interesting or unique.
Anyway, enough of that. You're probably either laughing or switching off right now or whatever. Anyway.
No, it's not funny. These emotional tools are used to circumvent people's rationality and persuade them of something that perhaps they would not be rationally convinced by. There's nothing funny about that. You can sell anything that way to the people who are in a state of mind to accept it, as you obviously were.
So let's dive into what your heart already knows.
Yes, please enlighten me with your grand insights into my interior mental state. I find this deeply interesting and...
Yeah, but I didn't say mental state, I said your heart, bro.
I know what you said, and you're talking about feelings, which are in the mind.
And it's quite funny, because in the comments people are like, your heart is just an organ that pumps blood. As if it's like a really intelligent thing to say. I'm like, okay, mate, yeah, but you know what I mean.
Yes, you mean your feelings, which are in your mind. See, they're pointing out it's not literally your heart. When you say your heart, you mean something that is not your heart. You're using it as a metaphor for something else, which is specifically this aspect of, as I said, your interior mental state. But then when I just skip the metaphor and say what the metaphor refers to in direct literal language, you're like, no. I actually mean your heart. Okay, well, in that case, your heart just pumps blood. It's an entirely valid response if you're doubling down and saying you literally mean a person's heart. I understand it's not exactly an insightful statement, and normally it would be reasonable to assume that you're speaking metaphorically, but you've just disabused us of that notion.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say, and I'm sure you're aware of it, that there's something different between our brain, logic and reason and all that, and then our heart. The thing that loves people.
Which is also your brain. Your brain doesn't just do logic and reason. But I didn't say your brain. I said your mental state. The state of your mind. Which also doesn't just do logic and reason. Feelings are mental. Even if by heart you mean something non-physical, like the soul, or whatever part of the soul feels feelings, and you're just not saying that for some reason, feelings are still mental. The assertion about the mind with regard to the soul would be that the mind is entirely or partially of the soul. Although a person might think that the brain entirely explains the mind, the concept of mind is not identical to the concept of brain. When we speak of the mind, we're not necessarily speaking of the brain at all, which is of course why people can say that God is a brainless mind. And when you speak of the heart, whatever you literally mean, which apparently is not the thing that goes thump, 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 when you speak of the thing that loves people, that's still an aspect of the mind, regardless of its source. You seem very confused about terminology and conceptual distinctions.
You could say our, things that are emotions and there's a difference there. And you guys are always trying to pin it back to the brain.
Yes, Ed, there are differences between things. There are differences between emotions, feelings, your brain, your heart, your mind, your soul, all these different concepts, and you're not making them. At least not in any way that makes any sense. We're not talking about the brain, Ed. I didn't say the word brain. You did. That's your word. I said your mental state. Then you act like I said the brain, which I did not. And then you keep bringing it back to the heart, as if you literally mean the heart when you use that word. You're not talking about the organ that pumps blood. That's what the heart is, literally speaking. Unless you actually think your physical heart knows stuff, which is a thing that people used to think thousands of years ago. People used to think of the heart as essentially doing what we think of the brain doing now. But I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt on that. I assume that you believe that the literal physical heart does in fact pump blood. But regardless of where the seat of feelings and thoughts is, they're still mental. The physical location doesn't change that.
To the mind, I know a lot of you don't even believe in a mind. You're like, no, it's just a physical thing.
You said the mind is a physical thing. Ed, I said the mind, you said that's the brain, and the brain is a physical thing. If you're upset at this distinction not being made, then start making it yourself. Don't complain about people doing a thing you do, which come to think of it is what you've been doing this entire video on various different issues. But regardless, Ed, if the mind is a physical process in the brain, that doesn't mean there is no mind. Except, I guess, if you want to interpret is as only referring to objects and not events. But see, now I'm trying to be precise with words again, and so you'd probably say I'm trying to trick you or nitpick. Nevertheless, there's value in clarity whether you see it or not.
I'm just like, oh my goodness. Anyway, God bless you guys. God bless you guys.
What do you want, Ed? What are you upset by? You're confusing yourself and getting upset at me. Just stop and think for 10 seconds about what you're saying. Or actually listen for 10 seconds to what I'm saying. You keep pausing and saying, other people said this, other people said that. You guys do this, you guys do that. Okay, maybe I didn't. Don't you think it's important to listen to the actual words that the actual person talking to you is saying? Or is it sufficient to just assume what the person's saying based on what team they're on?
So, hang on, what time is it? I've got to go out soon. So, hang on. Oh, crap, hang on. I might have to end this video.
You're more than welcome to, anytime you want.
I'll finish it on 10 minutes.
That's a minute and 10 seconds more of my video for you to go through. We're going to be here a while.
Why are we here? Huge question, right?
Whether that question is huge and deep, or incredibly shallow and small, interesting or incredibly dull, useful or useless, depends largely, I think, on what you mean by the word why. And I'm pretty sure we're not going to readily agree on...
Oh, man.
Oh no, how could this word that's been a sticking point through this entire saga possibly have been something I would foresee as a sticking point? Why would I think such a strange thing that was completely borne out in your response? It's almost as if I understood what you intended by it before you even said it. One might almost think I've done this before.
Again, like, you guys like overthink stuff like crazy. You like hone in on a word and you're like, oh, hang on. The actual definition of that is blah, 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 blah. And therefore you're wrong.
No, not therefore you're wrong. Therefore, we have a sticking point. We have a point of obvious disagreement that is going to be extremely hard to bridge. Your understanding of what that word means in reference to explaining things about the universe is radically, fundamentally, philosophically different from mine. There is no way for that not to cause a problem in these conversations. And thus it has to be talked about for us to even understand the conversation. If you just go, don't define your terms, don't say blah, 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 you're shutting down any possibility of conversation or understanding. And what I was trying to do there was open it up to enable you to see that there's something here which I perceive as a major cause of misunderstandings. And I was indeed correct. We've been through this in this video. Unless this is like part 3 and it was in part 2 or something. But if we treat all the parts as one large video, it was in this video. I was right to point this out. I knew this had to be done. And do you know why I knew that? It's because this ain't my first rodeo, Ed. I've been here and done that a whole bunch of times. And it always goes the same way, because it's always the same misunderstandings for the same reasons. And when people do what you just did and say terms don't need definitions, we don't need to be using the same language to understand each other, you're just trying to trick me. You're just trying to find excuses to pretend I'm wrong. You atheists with your blah, 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 talking about meanings of words like that matters. Then you shut everything down. And I really don't think you mean to. I just think you don't know any better. You haven't had enough conversations. You haven't encountered enough of these problems to understand why these things need to be done. You don't understand why I speak the way I do. You don't understand why I get so hung up about precision in language. Have you ever heard of Chesterton's fence? You find a fence out in the middle of nowhere, and you say, well, this fence seems pointless, so you go and ask the owner if he can take it down, and the owner says, you know what? Go away. Understand why the fence is there, then come back and ask me, and maybe then I'll let you take it down. Here you are saying that I shouldn't be speaking of agreement and precision in language, while you clearly have no clue why I proceed as I do. Go away and learn why I do it before you insist I stop.
I'm just like, don't overthink it. You know what I mean.
Yes, Ed. I know what you mean when you say why something happens. Do you know what I mean? Do you think there might be a difference in what we mean? Do you think that might matter to the conversation? Do you think perhaps it might be worth pointing out?
Like, why are we here? the most important question of all time?
In your religion. That's another religious assumption, Ed. Why, by which you mean, by what intention, for what assigned purpose, do we exist? It's already clear from your attitude what you mean by why, but you've made it entirely clear in this video. You've specified it. You don't mean how, you don't mean what happened, you mean what's the intent behind it. And of course, since I think that just isn't a thing, asking what it is kind of pointless. So as I said, in my opinion, if we go with your definition of why, the question becomes shallow and small and dull and useless. Whereas with my definition, which is precisely equivalent to how, in my opinion, the question becomes huge and deep and interesting and useful. That's why I pointed out to you that whether this is a huge question really depends on how we use that word. Why? And rather than listening for a second and understanding what was being said, you just scoffed and mocked and tossed the point away, unexamined. It makes one wonder what else you might do that with.
Like, why are we here? The most important question of all time. Okay, maybe not all, you know what I mean? It's the most important question in your life. Why are you here? What's your purpose?
Purpose is another one that we don't agree on, but I guess I won't even bother bringing it up because blah, 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 right? You're not trying to understand anything, Ed. Whenever I try to clarify what I mean and what I think, you just ignore it and shove it aside.
If you were to die tomorrow, why? Why? How do you want to be remembered? Like,
I think that now you're equivocating personal purpose, developed through life experience, the kind of thing that leads you to ask, how will other people remember me? With the cosmic purpose that led to you being here in the first place. Do me a favor and settle on one, and then we can talk.
oh, so I just die, just disappear. And then the universe just disappears. Who cares?
Well, actually, yeah, who does care what happens to the universe eventually? How many normal people do you really think would think that the potential heat death of the universe trillions of years from now has anything important to do with their interpretation of their life here and now and what the events in it mean to them, unless they were persuaded by someone to somehow see this as a relevant problem?
oh, so I just die, just disappear. And then the universe just disappears. Who cares? Do you want to see how depressing that is?
It doesn't matter what you or I or anyone thinks about it, Ed. If a God doesn't exist, you don't have divine purpose. If an afterlife doesn't exist, you don't have an afterlife. And if you don't believe those things exist, then you don't believe it. That's just how it is. It doesn't matter if it makes you depressed. Just like if an atheist doesn't like the Bible and doesn't like God and doesn't like Christians and doesn't like hell, that doesn't mean they don't exist. That is not what determines truth. Reality is not based on your feelings, and I don't form beliefs based on what I want to feel. That's a real good way to end up with beliefs that have no relationship to reality whatsoever. Anyway, now again, it doesn't sound like you're talking about some personal purpose to develop a legacy so the people you leave behind remember you. Now again, it seems like you've switched back to the religious track, implying that if your existence ever ends, or if it's ever forgotten, then it can't have any point at all, and that your existence somehow becomes horribly depressing. These are two separate issues, let's talk about them separately. In the case of the religious purpose, correct, I don't think there is one. I do think you actually die. The process that is your mind ceases to continue permanently. The universe probably won't disappear, but regardless, you won't be there to experience whatever it does. And I fully understand that you find this depressing and hard to swallow, which has no bearing on its truth. If you refuse to believe it purely on emotional grounds, well, that's you suppressing the truth to maintain your lifestyle, which is what you accuse other people of doing. Now, from my perspective, I don't find the prospect of death all that depressing. I never expected anything else. I've made my peace with this a long time ago. As I said in my video about surgery, my only worry about death is what life is going to be like if I die too early and can't provide for my family the way I would like to. But death itself is acceptable. Perhaps I would change it if I could, but I can't, so there's no use dwelling on it. I might as well just get used to it, which I have. It's a bit funny, you talk as if atheism is something that we're adopting because it's so much more emotionally appealing, but then all you have to say about it is how emotionally unappealing it is. So what about it do you think appeals so much to me that I emotionally prefer it over religion? Is it possible that you've misunderstood many, many things? Maybe, Ed, it might be worth considering that if atheism is so miserable in every conceivable way, the people that you're talking to aren't choosing it because of its emotional appeal. Maybe it really is because the alternative doesn't seem true. Maybe you're dealing with a group of people so weird that they prefer the truth about reality, even if it's hard sometimes, to comfortable, emotionally satisfying lies.
In Christianity, we say you can live on this planet right now with joy, peace, love, freedom, despite what goes on, despite people dying, despite you getting illnesses and sicknesses, and you can have a really good life despite your circumstances. You can be dirt poor and really happy. And then when you die, you get to be with your creator.
Oh, how wonderful. So many wonderful, comfortable, emotionally satisfying things to believe. But see, there's one problem here, for me, which is that I care what's true. I don't build my beliefs by shopping around for whichever belief system gives me the most positive emotions. I know you want to believe I do. I know that you assume that I do, because you do. I heard your testimony. I've heard you all the way through this video. I know that you're saying this right now because you're absolutely banking on the idea that I do, because then maybe there's a chance that this'll work. But I don't. I really don't. I do not know how to make this any more clear to you. I don't know how to make you understand. I've heard your testimony. I know that all that matters to you is the emotional appeal of ideas. The truth is secondary at best. But that's not the case with me. The truth is a precious thing that I care about incredibly deeply. Reality matters to me. My goal is that to the best of my ability, I experience reality for what it is, not what I want it to be. I don't care what feels nice. I don't care if I would feel better as a Christian, or a Muslim, or a Buddhist, or a Hindu, or anything else. I have no interest in these fantasies you're marketing to me. I don't think they're true. No thanks to you, by the way. You've done nothing to try to convince me they're true, aside from, I guess, telling me lots of people believe it. Were there any other actual arguments here, fallacious or otherwise? Not that I recall, anyway. Oh, I guess some stuff is pretty, therefore God did it. But that was more talking about the previous video. That's the best you've got in terms of actually convincing me. But because you think I'm this guy who's shopping around for the best high, now you're just going with, man, this stuff will make you feel good. Keep it.
And I know a lot of you are questioning, oh, what about hell? Why would a God he can't be a good God if he has...
Well, if I was shopping around for a religion on the basis of good feelings, yeah, that'd be a mark against yours. But I'm not doing that, so who cares? Your religion could be the worst one in the world, and that would make it no more or less believable. Of course, the contradiction between the good God and the hell thing, yeah, that kind of does, but you get what I mean, maybe. If not, who cares? We don't need clarity.
There's different perspectives on hell, and there's a school of thought that just says, if you reject God your whole life, when you die, he rejects you, because you didn't want to be with him.
Yeah, so then he lets you slide off into hell. Whatever. Why are we talking about hell now? What does this have to do with the topic we were on?
Which is common. Like, why would he want to be with you if he's got, 7 billion of us on the planet?
Wow, I really don't care about this.
And you spend your whole life mocking him and doing videos mocking him.
Mocking you mean? You're not God, right?
And then you die. Why can't he just get rid of you if he made you and there's 7 billion other people like you?
Well, love, you would think. Using all of your infinite power to avoid such a horrible fate for your beloved children. Omnibenevolence would be another one. Maybe realize that the people who don't believe in you, and then show them you exist, for a start. 'Cause Ed ain't cutting it in terms of bringing the evidence. But Ed does seem to admit that some people sincerely don't believe. Perhaps, as he said, just through having weak spiritual muscles and therefore being unable to understand the situation, which doesn't seem any more worthy of condemnation than having poor reasoning muscles, or indeed poor literal muscles. As he said, it's just different strengths. Likewise, it doesn't seem worthy of eternal condemnation that people with strong spiritual muscles and weak reasoning muscles are unable to understand complex chains of reasoning. It doesn't seem loving to allow either of these groups of people to fall into eternal condemnation on the basis of a genuine weakness and lack of comprehension. But nevertheless, there's no safety net in place for those people who were simply created without the ability to understand. And so those people who God, with his infinite knowledge and power, has not yet bothered to provide provide with enough information to even establish that he's there, let alone what he wants or which religion is true, doesn't seem very loving or benevolent, letting them slide away into a pit of infinite torture without even knowing that it's happening, or that there is such a thing at all, or that there is this loving father, or any possibility of a relationship to be had, because none of this is perceived or understood. The father supposedly desiring a relationship, but seeing that this is not going to happen because of the lack of awareness in the child, refuses to reach out and ensure that the child is aware that he's there, and that there's a possibility of a relationship, and that this relationship is important, so that the child can make an actual informed choice. No, although he knows that this would be necessary for the child to not be damned, he does nothing, and therefore people are damned by his will. His choice to not present a choice. By the way, I love how you put it. He just gets rid of you because you don't matter because there's 7 billion other ones. You can just take another human off the stack, basically. Wow, what deep personal love for you in particular, huh? You're so weirdly honest. Ed, do you have any idea how special you are? By the way, before anyone gets on Ed's case for saying 7 billion instead of 8, that's because we're old. It was 7 billion not that long ago. And 6. And 5. Ed's number's only a few years behind.
All I'm saying is just keep an open mind.
Okay, sure. But I hope you understand what you're asking for. This reminds me of when you said something like you might not want to admit it, but you're clearly looking for an answer to the question of whether or not there's a God, as if that was some sort of non-obvious thing to say. Like, yeah, that's what people are doing. They're keeping an open mind to answers to questions, and in the meantime, they don't see your answer as especially likely. Being open-minded means you're willing to look at new things, and willing to change your mind if some new input compels you to do so. It doesn't just mean you open your mind and then you believe the religion. I'm not saying you think that, it's just some people do, so I'm making it very clear.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've laid in bed asking myself, what's the point of what I'm doing? What does it bring me? What will be its impact on the people around me? What are my goals and ambitions? That kind of thing. And sure, if you mean something else, like, what's the end goal God assigned me? What is the dictated purpose placed upon my shoulders? Then no, that kind of thing does not occur to me because that's, again, your religious idea. You think like that.
No, bro, it's not a religious idea though, is it?
Okay, you know what? We can split hairs. I like doing that. Let's do it. Sure, technically you can believe in divinely given purpose without any of the other things that might be seen as necessary to define your belief as a religion in the strict sociological sense. Fair enough. Ya got me. I spoke with the sloppiness. However, it's also a religious idea, and religion is by far the main source of that kind of thinking. But sure, fair enough. Regardless, though, it most definitely is a theistic idea, considering that it's a god giving you the purpose, so it still doesn't occur to me because it's a theistic idea.
It's not a religious idea though, is it? I used to think that before I became a Christian.
Right, when you were praying and crying to God. So when you were a theist. The idea that a god has a purpose for your life is a theistic idea, and what I'm trying to tell you is I don't think in those terms, because I don't believe there's a god. You're getting hung up on the distinction between religion and theism, which fair enough, but you were just complaining at me about getting hung up on words and nitpicking them. For a guy who thinks splitting definitional hairs is an atheist trick, you sure do it.
People think this all the time. Like, you speak to so many people who are atheists or whatever and they become Christian, and they were like, yeah, I was just thinking, like, what am I doing in my life? Why am I here? That's not got nothing to do with religion.
Oh, that's what you meant? Damn. I shouldn't have said you got me, because you clearly didn't. That's not what you meant. I got myself. Okay, Ed. I said that the idea of a god handing down purpose to you is a religious idea, or if you like, a theistic idea. But now you've said, no, that's not a religious idea, because people think to themselves, what am I doing with my life? Which you're right, indeed has nothing to do with religion or theism, because that's a matter of personal direction. Do you see how these are not the same thing at all? But you're treating them as if they are. You might want to look up that fancy word I used before when I said you were equivocating, because you're doing it again.
That's just like common sense, isn't it?
Pretending that two totally different things are the same thing? No.
If you're like, it's exactly the same thing as what you just said. Like, okay, what am I doing in my life? Like, what am I doing in my work? How am I doing in my business? You're thinking, what am I doing in my situation right now, my business and where I live and my family and whatever? It's exactly the same thing, but just slightly bigger picture.
By slightly bigger picture, you mean not exactly the same thing at all. How do you think I'm going to fall for this?
So what am I doing? So you're saying, what am I doing right now with these certain things? Saying, what am I doing in my life is just the bigger picture.
Yes, okay. A person saying, what am I doing with my life, is indeed a slightly bigger picture, longer term version of thinking about what am I doing right now with my business and my family. But now you're retreating back up the motte instead of bravely fighting it out in the Bailey, which is talking about divine purpose dictated to you by God, which is, in fact, not just a bigger picture version of the exact same thing, but a completely different thing, in which rather than talking about the purpose that you assign to your life, which is an idea based upon human motivations, interests, concerns, which pretty much everyone is going to find relevant, you're talking about some other entity's purpose for your life, and the reason why it originated your existence, which is an idea based upon theism, which therefore atheists are not going to find relevant. You can say these are exactly the same and there's no distinction to be made here all you want. Say it 1,000,000 times, it's not going to become more true. This is a bizarrely childish fumbling attempt at intellectual sleight of hand. You're not fooling anyone.
But then, because it's a thought, we Christians say, or we say to you, you have to reject it, don't you?
It doesn't matter who says the theistic idea, Ed. I don't believe in God, therefore talking about God's purpose for my life is not something that concerns me. So your question, why are we here, with the word why understood through your theistic lens, is not a relevant question from my perspective. It holds no value and no interest. You keep wanting to drag this back to being all about you. Anything I believe or don't believe, think or don't think, must just be a reaction to you. Because why would anyone do anything or think anything if it wasn't about you? You're not the center of the universe, Ed. Everyone else doesn't revolve around you.
You get, you shut it down because it comes from a Christian.
It's just incredible the amount of self-obsession these people have. I'm just explaining to you my sincerely held view, because your video is all about my view, not yours. That's what you were talking about, so that's why I was talking about it. You seemed to have an idea about what my view was, which was incorrect, as became increasingly obvious as the video went further beyond the point that we've reached so far in your response. So I was making my position clear so that you would understand. And you're like, no, you must just be saying that because I'm a Christian, because you define yourself solely in relation to Christianity. Fuck off, dude. I do not derive my views by just flipping whatever you say. You apparently think you're that important, but you're not.
Which tells me that you have an emotional bias against Christians, and I'd love to get to actually speak to you about your life and everything like that to understand why.
The level of conceitedness on display here is incredible to witness. Have you actually convinced yourself of this? That my responses here are just me posing myself as some sort of mirror image of you in some perverse kind of inverse emulation? So you won't even allow that I have my own thoughts on these issues that I've thought through without you. You really cannot fathom your ideology simply not being relevant. Well, if your ego is that big of a barrier to understanding, then I have no idea how to help you. This is deranged.
I know me saying that will annoy you, because you're like, I'm not opening up to this guy. Who does he think he is? He thinks he knows me, and he thinks he knows better than me, and he thinks he knows everything about me and my heart, and blah, 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 blah.
Open up about questions about my life? Come ask me, dude, in my Discord, but do me the courtesy of at least considering that I have a mind independent of you. It'd be nice if you were at least open to the possibility that I'm not a straight-up NPC.
I don't know. Anyway, I've got to go. I'm going to leave it there, because I've got to go into the city. I'm actually going to a Bible study.
Oh, you must just be doing that because I'm an atheist. And whatever an atheist thinks, you have to do the opposite thing. You heard me say atheist things, and now you're like, oh, I want to study the Bible and be a Christian. That's the only reason you would ever do anything. It's all about me, you ass.
I'll probably do some Bible studies soon. You guys can join in. When I do my Bible studies, guys, I challenge you just to sit through it with me, okay? And you might like it. You might find it interesting.
Join my Discord, come talk to me, ask me whatever questions you want, and I'll answer them. And if you can do that, and hold your fucking tongue about me being an empty-headed moron who defines my views relative to you, then I'll join you in a Bible study.
Especially if you like history and stuff like that. We're not really weird, nerdy people. But like, we're actually pretty normal people.
So are we, believe it or not, despite my jokes about us being weird. You realize we're familiar with Christians, right?
And if you actually like got to know some of us Christians, you'd realise that we're actually like, there's things that you might like about us.
I know plenty of Christians. Most of us do. Do you think we're from another planet or something? How is every aspect of your understanding of the people you're interacting with here so flawed? I don't even understand how it's possible to be this ignorant. Have you spent your entire life under a rock? Did it fall on your head?
Anyway, God bless you guys. This video, obviously, I'm doing a rebuttal to your rebuttal. So I'm being like critical, like using critical thinking, which is something that you at the start don't think I have.
At the start, I thought you might have some, but this video convinced me that you have no idea what that means or how to do it. The level of reasoning, and perhaps more importantly, care and attention on display here was shockingly poor, even by the standards of videos that I respond to. Most of the time you didn't even seem to listen to anything I said, and said some random, disconnected, logically incoherent gibberish, as if you were responding to something completely different from what you actually heard. You can take or leave this, but this is sincere advice. You really need to think harder about what you're doing. Maybe try editing your video like I do. It gives you a chance to pause and think, does what I just said make any sense? Is it a response to what anyone said? Start with those two questions and you can go from there. Those alone will lead to a great improvement.
But I've got nothing, love, for you. I know that sounds weird.
Kinda, yeah, but I know you're a Christian, it's fine.
But, respect to you guys. I don't think I'm better than you. I'm not looking down on you.
I might have believed that until that last bit about how I only have the opinions I have because a Christian said the opposite. That was one of the most condescending things I've heard in a while.
I don't think I know you better than you know yourself or anything like that.
Again, I might have been willing to accept that until that part. If that was not the impression that you meant to give, you really need to learn how to stop and think about what you're saying. Consider editing.
Like I said in my videos, I was just trying to use a bit of hyperbole, trying to poke you a bit with a stick, and it worked. A YouTube of 140,000 people has commented on my video.
Okay, good troll. Although frankly, it still seems like that was exactly what you think anyway. You've backpedaled a lot in this video, but you've forward-pedaled at least as much. At this point, it's quite a mess, trying to untangle what you actually think. You seem to endlessly talk out of both sides of your mouth.
God bless you. I just pray for you. I pray for you have a good week. I pray for you have a good evening. And I pray for health, peace, love, joy, freedom. And I pray you become a Christian, because it is a better life.
Okay, Ed. Well, despite my irritation, I wish all the nice things back to you, but I don't wish that you'll become an atheist. There's nothing here for you. There's no reward, no emotional fulfillment. You'd probably just be mopey because you clearly have a strong emotional attachment to Christianity, and I don't want to have to deal with mopers. But what would be nice is if you could at least begin to grasp what it is for someone to actually think differently from you. That's all I would want.
Okay, I challenge you just to, when I do a Bible study, just to come along and just join in. I challenge you, okay? Prove to me that you're not small-minded and narrow-minded. Prove to me that you're open-minded, okay?
Seriously? You're going to talk about being open-minded after that mushy pea-brained trash you just talked about me. And you think I'm going to care to prove something to you after that? Unreal.
And I say that with love, okay? Please don't get offended.
You say it with unfathomable hypocrisy. I don't understand how you have so little self-awareness. But yes, again, fine, Ed. My counteroffer's on the table.
Anyway, I'm going to end this now, and I'm going to watch the rest of this over the weekend. Okay, thank you. God bless you. Goodbye.
I wonder if he ever did. Who knows? So far, there's no response up to the rest, or to the second video. I guess we'll find out, or not. But for now, I guess, that is the end of the Ed beef. I hope there's more. It was some tasty beef. Ed's not quite an Almondo or a Schmool, but B-grade beef is still edible. Anyway, thank you for sticking with me through this trilogy. The third part was the best by far in my opinion. Subscribe, like, consider supporting. Huge thanks as always to all of my supporters. See you next time.